about AI ops with LLM. Uh, so I won't go so much in detail into AIMs, but I mean into AI ops, but a brief still before we start, right? So there are a lot of products and software available today in the market which deal with automating your current operations, which are currently done by a lot of support functions, right? And doing this with artificial intelligence consists of, I mean, is what meant by AI ops, right? And it's a way of going about doing that, right? So now, today, how the softwares work is that they take a lot of data from your systems. This could be like a lot of different, right? Depends on the systems also. And they train certain models with it. And as the training happens, the models slowly learn how to do a number of tasks. A few of them may be monitoring or predictive analytics or doing a root cause on your current issues and so on and so forth, right? But one big thing is that there still needs to be a lot of training which needs to be done with these tools for them to enable to come to a satisfactory level, right? And even then, it requires a lot of active involvement of the users themselves, depending on the maturity of the tool, right? So the current POV which we have is mostly two, right? So one of them would involve analyzing Blue Prism cues, the items, and we'll go through the items. We will be directing the LLM to behave in a certain fashion through prompts. And for a standard support team, it could be a standard SOP which they have to do accordingly, right? And we'll also expect to receive a structured response from the LLM, which would kind of be what it is supposed to action, right? And Blue Prism would be acting as the eyes or for that matter the actual hands and feet doing that action, right? So quickly to go over the queue data which we have. So there are four exceptions. One of them is a system exception. Now email is supposed to go to IT for this, and I'm not sending anything else except for the prompt as well as the exception errors, right? Second is a business exception. It's supposed to go to the business. The email is supposed to go to the business. The last two are resubmissions in a way, but one is a standard resubmission supposed to be deferred. I mean, there is no deferred time frame there, right? It can happen immediately. But the second last one has an error message in there which says that, hey, application is available only after this time, right? And the specific time mentioned there. So in those cases, the prompt says something like, hey, if there's a time mentioned there after which resubmission is going to be successful, tell you what, why don't you defer it after 30 minutes, right? So that's what the logic says. And we'll come back to the queue entries, right? So before we go, let me start this again. So while this happens, I'll show you the rest of it. This is the browser which is supposed to work on this. And we are directly interacting with this browser. I kind of tend to jump. So as you can see, it just put in that request. It added all of the exception items together and give it a minute. Yes, and there we have ChatGPT with the response. So let's go over the response while it processes on the back end. We'll go back to the queue entries to see what happened with the retry. And here you see, first one is a retry. There is no defer time. Second one has a defer time. It's at 2 a.m. UTC, if you remember. The defer time is 2:30 a.m. I think in India time zone, in my queues, you should see it as 8 a.m., right? 2:30 is 8 a.m. there. Now, the third one is a business, email to business. See here, and the error is, of course, a business exception, right? And last one is a system exception, and it's supposed to go to IT, which it did, right? It did all of that, what's actually mentioned in the prompt. So, along with the error messages, I'm also sending out details of the prompt. Keep in mind, what really matters is how big of a message or how much of a data can you pass on to your LLM also. And a few things which are missing here, which I really like, is going to be the confidence score, right? When you're building an automated system like this, it's without an automated score, you're going to have to kind of, I don't know how you're going to build those checks and balances, right? But you're going to have checks and balances to make sure it goes through fine, right? So again, I'm going to come back to our Blue Prism, this completed, and let me go to the queue themselves, right? Let me refresh this. So we have two different retries here. So the two emails are also there in a separate collection. It's pretty basic, so I won't go through that. But if you check the retries, and I'm not worried about this retry, right? And this is a standard retry. So this is the retry, which if you look at the next review date, see here 8 a.m. IST. So it actually, based on the response of the LLMs, it scheduled a resubmission or rework of this particular item, queue item, right? And it did it automatically. The only thing it had was like a prompt which was supposed to work as an SOP in this case. A very simple use case, but as I see, it kind of shows us how this works, right? So keep in mind, when I was designing this, I also saw that not everything worked the first time, right? And I had to go back and kind of give that feedback to the LLM for it to work. But here's the other question which comes up, right? What is going to happen when you fine tune your LLM for a particular task? And then, some update comes in from the main OEM, or somehow you need to kind of upgrade your LLM to the next version. What happens to your fine tuning, your context, or how you kind of teach LLMs in those cases? So that's still a very large question at this point, so I won't go so much. But this is one of the demos which we have. Now the next one is session logs, right? So let me show you my session logs, right? Now my session logs has a few out of memory errors, and these are staged. So I put in a few out of memory errors. Now is, and this is my other conversation which is happening, right? So what I'm going to do is that my program gets event logs. And in this case, Blue Prism event logs, it can be different logs for different applications which you have, right? And obviously it has certain parameters in there. And if I talk about what is the prompt which I'm sending, so I've said that, hey, you know what? If you come across memory errors, out of memory errors, do this. But at the same time, look at the CPU, the memory, the load parameters, and accordingly provide some sort of a tag, right? Either restart or email or with the error message, whichever is there, right? But do it after you analyze it. So let me quickly run this so that you'll know, right? So let me quickly also show you what comes in, and keep in mind, this is a real time, right? So this is what's coming out of my session logs. And this is my current RAM. Look to see it's 48%. Disk used is 19%. Of course, this is a load average across 15 minutes. I'm just using it for demo, so you don't see any load. But then you can probably run this against a high load system to see if what kind of this thing works. All right, so we shall wait. Okay, I don't think it actually sent it. So let me run this again. All right, so there you have it. It has to be kind of on the screen for it to work. And let's wait for this thing. Okay, so it says restart high RAM with high OEM. So that's one of the responses which came back with it, right? So here's the thing, right? When I ran it the second time, my instantaneous RAM was at 51%, right? And my prompt variable said, if my event logs have them more than 2 entries of out of memory error within 5 minutes and RAM used is about 50%, send this message back, which will easily be understandable by something like Blue Prism, right? And of course, Blue Prism will then act as the actual support representative to go ahead and do this, right? Do that restart. So imagine the use case, right? You have different systems, and I've seen customers come to me and say, hey, you know what? How do you even make sure that your process which runs next doesn't have a system problem, right? So you can build in those standard processes, right, which actually gets you to your system data, the RAM, CPU, all of that, maybe even something with smoke tests, right? And based on the response count which comes in, then you have an early warning system or an early action system, which does this to your VMs to make sure that the process runs fine. And this is just Blue Prism, right? When you actually look at it, what's going to happen is that the same thing can be used across multiple systems, right? Now, those who are familiar with RAG, right, you have to make sure that You put in guardrails so that your LLMs don't hallucinate, don't do, the source of information needs to come from a vector database. In this case, the source of information is coming in from systems integrated with Blue Prism, at least in the first case. And again, Blue Prism is the one which is actually doing that action, right? So BP acts as the hands and feet for the LLM based on the responses obtained. And of course, these can be developed further, right? Depending on the capabilities of the LLM. Keep in mind, those capabilities really, really matter. So, but that's about it for the demo as well as the presentation. Thank you all for listening. And hopefully this was helpful in a bit more use cases for LLMs, right? Thank you all. Bye.